They're live. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our 21st meeting of Economic Development. Can I first start by getting a motion to approve the minutes of our prior meeting? Supervisor Smith, seconded by Supervisor Strow. Any comments, observations? All those in favor? Aye. The privilege of the floor. Don't see anyone there. So why don't we first start with Liza if we can? We'll run through it if we can. Thank you, Liza.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning. Where are we at? Morning. I just have a few resolution requests for you. The first one is our final seat for the Workforce Development Board position. We definitely wanted a healthcare representative, so we went with Hudson Headwaters, and Sue Corney recommended Elaine Wilkie, who's the Director of Human Resources.
I'll move it. Supervisor Garrity, second by Supervisor Strow. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Motion carried.
Thank you. And the next two, you're welcome to put them together if you want, or go through them individually. Amend my budget to receive the federal community project grant to start home-based childcare businesses. It's taken 2 years to get that funding, but we are now receiving it. And then the second one is for our summer youth employment program, the funds from the TANF agency.
Why don't we put them both together if that's okay? Supervisor Strauss, seconded by Supervisor Smith. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Matter carried.
And then finally, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I would just love to share some workforce updates. So Supervisor Wild last meeting asked for some data around our salaries and healthcare in CDLs versus Saratoga County and other counties. What I found in my research is that healthcare positions average salaries were pretty steady and equal, but many of the CDL jobs in Saratoga County do pay a little bit more, especially if they're private sector. So I wanted to make sure that I came back with that requested information. I also wanted to give you a general update about how our program year went, since we are July 1st to June 30th. So we funded 35 people through training programs this past year, and 20 of them have completed them and the others are in progress. These are training programs to be LPNs, CDL drivers. We had 11 CDL drivers. We sponsored asbestos contractors, HVAC technicians, EKG technicians, and SERPAs, CRPA. SERPAs support people with substance use, mental health. So we funded 6 SERPAs as well this past year. And that amount of money is about, I have it here somewhere, about $36,000. We typically fund each individual up to $3,000, but we have discretion to go above that if need be. We still have a lot of funding to spend, thanks to your support, ARPA committee, and our federal WIOA dollars. So we're still trying to get the word out there. Don Lehman is helping us. But if anybody wants to get a certification, whether they're employed or underemployed or a job seeker, we can help pay for that. Especially for in-demand industries, which you've heard me share how we've sponsored nurses and CDL drivers. We are gearing up for summer youth employment program. We have our orientation on Tuesday. We have 40 youth, around 40 youth from around the county, every school district represented. With youth, we are paying their salaries, and this is free help to local businesses and municipalities. So just to give a few examples, we do have 14 returning youth of the 40, so it's a nice mix of new and returning. We have youth at Open Door, Town of Chestertown, the Georgian Resort, Red Rail, Salvation Army, so quite a mix. We're super excited, and one thing that's new this year with our summer youth employment program is we're focusing on 5 employability skills, things like responsibility and communication, teamwork. And then we're also using a new service called Engage by Cell, because that's how young people like to communicate. So we can send messages to the worksite supervisors and our youth workers in group messages. So we really feel like that will help with timesheet processing and any other communications. For Operation Food Chain, which is one of the most popular programs with summer youth employment, we have students or youth who are preparing the lunches. For anybody under 18, it's free lunch in July and August. In the past, we've been at two sites to distribute those meals, Eastfield and Village Green. This year, we will only be at Eastfield. You'll start seeing signs around, and they'll also go up on social media so that families, any children under 18 who need a summer lunch can grab one. CDTA, I just had an update phone call with them this morning about how the merge is going. They are certainly just making sure we're consistent with our trolley and bus schedule this summer. Their mechanic has been helping us for the last 4 or 5 months, so that's continuing. So they're not going to be doing any branding changes or anything for a little while. They really just want to keep service going, but they have been building relationships with the Greater Glens Falls Transit employees. They came up and had lunch with them. And they will start to do that this summer and fall, also meeting with different stakeholders in our community. They want to meet with local big nonprofits. They want to have another session with businesses, manufacturers, with EDC, and definitely tourism representation to just talk about transportation gaps and give them and start building those relationships and connections. As you may recall, there will be a Warren County appointment to the CDTA board, and I asked for more information about that. It will come from the governor's office. And so if you guys want to recommend somebody or follow up with the governor's office, you may do that, but it will come straight from the governor's office. Those are my main updates, but I'm happy to answer any questions around workforce.
Any questions for Liza?
Yeah, on the sponsoring the job training, is there any, there's a lot of people fleeing south and fleeing up. Do we have any kind of hooks on that? Like if we give them 3,000, they gotta stay in the area for a certain amount of time?
Yeah, it's really a lot of our young people who want to leave. And every time I'm talking to them in front of a class, we're sharing with them, myself, as well as chambers of commerce and other leaders about all the reasons they should stay. And we're making those connections, those business connections, and we're still thinking about creative ways to make those connections. Salary, I get a lot of inquiries about competitive salaries. And so I have a link I can send to anybody who wants to compare industry salaries to make sure that those businesses are being competitive to not only recruit, but to retain their workers.
Yeah, because I say like $3,000 for a CDL is quite a lot of money. And they can get not 9 to 5 jobs down in Albany, and weekends off.
Yeah,
which is pretty attractive for 65, 70,000 a year.
It is. For transportation and warehousing, the average salaries around here are usually around 50,000, but it does go up with private sector and certainly the benefits. But while there are a lot of jobs in Albany, we want people to take those CDL jobs here. And that is part of the application process about what their plan is for seeking work when they finish their training. We have sponsored DPW workers for the county and the city of Glens Falls, and as well as Warrensburg and Johnsburg, I believe. So they don't have to be job seekers. They can also be people who need to upgrade a certification or want to continue their professional education.
Supervisor Stroud.
Yeah, Liza, you said that they want to leave. Leave to go where and why?
Yeah, I think we can all remember being young and wanting to see what else is out there in the world. So what we hear from young people a lot, especially in the work we've done with Partnership for Community Belonging, is young people are looking for nightlife. They are looking for shopping. And there are some who haven't found a certain tech job here that they want. And so even with all the advances in technology and our huge business community, there's still a few jobs that they want to find elsewhere, which is why we are encouraging a lot of businesses to incorporate drones into their work and incorporate engaging young people in everything they do, inviting them to events. When we've had our high school summer job fairs every spring, every year we hear from the youth, oh, I didn't know these jobs were available for me. Or they drive by these places and they don't know what happens behind those doors. So the exposure in general will really help them stay. And I think we can all make sure that the businesses are doing more of that exposure with young people.
And we need to improve our nightlife.
Yes, we need to improve our nightlife. Yeah, in the shopping, and then there'll be other random things like
Shopping we got.
they want a Chick-fil-A too. I've heard that from so many young people. So, you know, those are the things that they say.
Well, we'll work on the Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
Some does it for jobs.
Questions.
Thank you, Liza. Any more questions for Liza? Thank you very much. Very informative.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Jim wanted to make a couple of comments and then we'll get into the.
Well, I want to build a little bit on what Liza said. First of all, she joined us last week for a forum that we talked specifically about the topic you guys were just raising, which is how do we engage parts of our workforce right now that are underdeveloped? And one of the primary areas we looked at was helping young people in particular steer towards trades versus a default choice to a 4-year college education. This is a controversial and somewhat frictional topic. But what we wanted to do is present data, and we brought the same speaker who talked about the demographic drought last year to provide both regional and national data on that. What's really clear here is that if someone chooses any number of trades, and those trades which we oftentimes think of in vocational terms extend into areas like nursing and medical technology and IT certifications, anything where a certification is required in a job is really what we're talking about. But you can pick any number of those. You could pick a traditional trade, whether it be plumbing or electrical. And in fact, we had the Pipefitters Union representatives there to help validate this. Or you could choose the healthcare field, or you could choose the IT field. No matter which field you choose, from a net value standpoint, in terms of building wealth and avoiding debt, every time the choice that is superior for somebody at 22, 25, 30, even as much into the mid-30s, is the choice of choosing a trade. This is a hard conversation, though, to get the entire community to understand. Liza's been working tirelessly on this since I met her. We have to get into schools, we have to talk to counselors, we have to talk to teachers, we have to talk to kids, we have to talk to their parents, and we have to talk to employers. All of us have a role to play in getting people to understand that right now we treat our youth as an exportable asset. And I don't think it's in our interest. And the communities that do better at being able to retain and engage this part of their workforce are going to do, we're just going to compete better. The work follows, the companies follow where that workforce is. If we allow it to continue to tread, then we are giving away one of the things that sits right here. But this is hard work. And I can tell you, I've gotten mixed feedback about that since I had it. And I think that means we're on the right track, because if we're raising hard topics and we're bringing data to bear and people want to engage in the fight, then at least we're in the arena. And I think we're getting people's attention. The partners we have, the assets we have here, SUNY Adirondack at the absolute pinnacle of it, that's the BOCs, the trade unions, Liza and staff are literally as good as it gets in the state. We have the assets to be able to do this, and we're leading partners. I think we have to continue to invest in all of them, and I applaud your efforts to do so. But whether we win on this or lose on this really matters. I mean, if you look south of us, if Saratoga and Albany are better at it than we are, then we will continue to lose people just down the street. And we don't have to, but it's going to take significant work. It took years for us to kind of inertia our way into this, and it's going to take a concerted effort for us to be able to affect the public perception around this, that this is not a lesser path. This is actually, in many ways, the best path. It does not box one out from going and seeking a 4-year degree. In fact, in many ways, it may be the most efficient way to do so. So I want to applaud you, Liza, for your continued work on this. We will continue to bring the economic data and the voice of business to this topic. On that topic, last week, CEG issued a press release that might have been missed. We're going to amplify it in the coming week, just so everyone here doesn't miss it. They studied micro business growth all over the country and specifically in New York, to compare New York and the capital district to it. They used data from GoDaddy, which is the single largest domain registrar for internet domains in the world. Here's what they found. In the 2020 to 2022 period, the capital region grew by 6% the number of micro businesses that were formed each year. However, Warren County grew by 12%. Warren County's growth rate over that period of time is the fifth largest in the state. It's the largest by far of any county that doesn't have more than 400,000 or 500,000 people. There's something going on here that was so jarring to them that they called me to actually confirm that the data wasn't wrong. Let me put this in context for you. During those periods of times, 4,600 businesses each year on average were registered. In order to meet this criteria, you had to do three things. You had to establish a domain name, you had to have an active website, and you had to have less than 10 employees. 4,000 entities in Warren County met that criteria. That is a stunning number. And what it says is that the work that we've been talking about investing in the new forms of infrastructure like broadband, but also things like transit, like I heard you talking about biking earlier in an earlier committee meeting. These things matter because the choices that people are making is to come to a place like this where they want to live and then figure out how to make their way. And we're not talking about this in future tense, it is present tense. The number of businesses that are forming here in third bedrooms and in shared workspaces is dramatic. That is so large. It is the number 5 growth rate in the state. It is the first in the capital region. It was by far the largest of what you would consider to be a small county's number. I tell you this not because I want to necessarily take credit for it. I want you to understand what is working and what is not. This county invested disproportionately in broadband over that period of time. There's no way that this is not in some way correlated to that. Somebody can now be in Warrensburg or can be in much of Thurman and much of Jonesburg and participate in this. We were not able to do that before the pandemic. I want to applaud your support of that, and I want to tell you that it's making a difference. It reinforces the investment that we're making in community capacity, and the discussions you have about things like recreation capacity, very material to this. People care about things like bike paths. They care about whether they can bike safely here. It's part of why they decide to come here instead of go to some other place like Burlington, Vermont, or Portland, Maine, or New Hampshire, when they're leaving the city or when they're coming to wherever it is that they're going. We did a study in the beginning of COVID that said who would ever volunteer the email address to anybody, whether it's the Chambers of Commerce, the EDC, the various groups that engage people in the Adirondacks. We asked 80,000 people, would you ever consider coming here? 25% of them said we were coming or want to come. And we're seeing that they are indeed coming. And they're coming where the investments are being made. So this is a guidepost to say that I think some of the work that the county has been doing is clearly delivering value. Now, we've got some work to do to figure out what does this really mean in terms of real dollars, in terms of real economic value. But one thing I can tell you is every one of these people that came, they did not have their taxes set aside. We did not have to spend any dollars to actually get them to come here like some communities do. We have to pay them to move here. They want to be here. We have a catchment system here that can work. And so I'm encouraged by this. I hope you're encouraged by this. We're going to put much more data out in the coming week of it, and hopefully we'll get a larger coverage. To that same point, I'm speaking tomorrow at the LGA's event on protecting the lake. Well, I would an economic development guy be speaking at the conference on lake protection, because the lake is also a big part of this. If you go to Regeneron's page right now, and Regeneron is one of the largest employers, and I think they currently have something like 200 open jobs in the capital district. If you go to their page where they're attempting to recruit people, there's a picture of Lake George. If you go to CapNY, which is the effort for the entire capital district to recruit and attract people of millennial age to come here in alternatives to places like Boulder or Austin, Texas. Then the second box on their website is Lake George. The third box on their website is Glens Falls. The fourth box is Troy. This is fascinating to me. The world is basically using, or at least our piece of the world is using our county as the lens by which to evaluate whether or not to come here. Again, I'm really encouraged by this, but protecting the lake and the image of the lake is part of that equation. And so it has economic value beyond what we experience here. It has economic value to large employers throughout the region. And we need to better capitalize on that. That's part of our role, is to go help explain the fact that a clean lake actually has stakeholders that go beyond the borders of the lake, even go beyond the borders of Warren County. Large employers in our entire region depend on that as an asset to both draw and hold their workforce. I share that with you because that's the message I'm going to share tomorrow, and I'm going to try to put some numbers to it. The last thing I want to tell you is what's going to throttle us on all of this is our housing capacity. And you're going to hear about that from others in a continued way, and it's going to have to be a continued focus for us. The most recent data that I got from the Southern Adirondack Realtors said that there were 105 single-family homes for sale in Warren and Washington County combined. Less than half of those for less than $500,000. If our ability to continue to say yes to people who want to be here is throttled by the fact that there's literally no place for them to come and be. Now, I know this is another hard topic. It feels different in every single community, and our goal is not to tell anybody what to do. I'm simply sharing with you that the fact is we can stub our own toe here. If we cannot continue to say yes, we will not get younger, and we will not capitalize on the desire for people to want to set up shop here. It is probably our single biggest challenge collectively, is figuring out how to figure out what is the right number in every single community. Luckily, we're going to have some data from the county's housing study to help guide that, which I think can be a catalyst for this conversation. And then the role of the EDC is to go out with you in all your various communities and engage people so they can understand the opportunity, the value in investing in this, read into the data, have whatever arguments or disagreements they want to have with it. We don't mind taking the bullets if there are people who feel like this is not what they want to hear. We have to go face into this. Because if we do not figure out how to add housing capacity, everything I just shared with you will kind of come to an abrupt halt, because there's literally no place for it to go.
Jim, what you could do is you should go to the communities and help the communities add to their hamlet areas.
Absolutely.
And really, I mean, one of the biggest drawbacks to housing anywhere in a town that's within the park that doesn't have an expanded hamlet is the regulations of the APA. They talk a good show, and everything sounds nice. Everything you just said sounds wonderful, but to get trained on certain jobs, they've put so much criteria on the training on certain jobs. And something that you could do maybe in a month's time before takes 3 months. I mean, who's got 3 months to go train? Regulations that we face on hamlets. You try to expand your hamlets. That's the biggest thing you could do is help the towns expand their hamlets. And then we would have more control over our land versus what we're faced with dealing with certain APA regulations. You know, where you could set up 8 acres for a house, maybe you could do it, or we could put in our own zoning things. I know in my community, I tried to expand my hamlet and I got shot down by the APA. One for political reasons, the second one is along the river. I understand that, but I got 600 acres that we're going to offer up for sale. Now it's not in the hamlet. If it was in the hamlet, I'm sure somebody would snatch up. I have another developer who wants to put 12 houses in town. It's not in the hamlet, and we're just missing sewer water. I've applied for sewer water down this road now for what, 2012 maybe, and now we're 11 years. We tried to get grant funding from the state to go along a river and put sewer and water. So those, to me, that's important. If you really want to do something to help the communities, then help them expand their hamlets.
Well, we agree with you, and this is part of the conversation we hope to start in every community, is getting them to understand what is available and what limits them. There's also discussions about consistent with any town's land use plan and zoning, whether or not there's expansion possible in terms of auxiliary building units or bifurcating or, creating duplexes that don't meet the density requirements.
It's all good talk. Unless you help the towns expand their hamlets, it's all talk. Because you're not going to get anywhere until we control more of our land use in the communities.
I understand. I understand your point. I think what we want to do is to approach this in a similar way we did to broadband, which is first introduce the overwhelming need and get people to at least acknowledge that. And then from there, say, these are the solution sets that we have to go engage in together, and how do we go about that? The challenge here is that sometimes this plays out in the planning boards of the various communities without that first part. And what we want to do is to try to get as many people exposed to this information as we can, as quickly as we can. And I think we'll use the county's housing study as part of that data that we'll share with them. And we want what you want. It took us many years to get here, and we're going to engage as long as it takes to try to address it. One last thing I want to say, she mentioned salary levels. CEG also released a study about healthcare in the capital district. It's at a critical juncture throughout the entire capital region, critical shortages in nursing and medical technicians in particular. Warren County is doing better than the rest of the capital district, primarily because Hudson Headwaters is doing better than most of the other providers. If you exclude Hudson Headwaters from the data set, however, we experience exactly the same shortages in the normal hospital system and the normal primary care system beyond Hudson Headwaters borders. So these issues that we share with the capital district are the gaining of our audience. I don't necessarily yet find anything that's a silver bullet that will help us fix them. You'll see some of that study released in the coming weeks by CEG as well. We participated in that. We provided the data. We'll continue to try to figure out anything that will bring us resources to help us address some of these workforce issues we're looking to engage in. Thank you, Chairman.
Very much appreciate the comments. Wayne.
Okay, I have one resolution request before the committee. We'd like to raise the starting salary on the principal planner. Let's see, it was 69,431 in the budget to 77,446. That's a step 5. We do have an applicant who has accepted a position contingent upon that. And I will say that the buying power of this person's current wages compared to here, their buying power would be less coming here even at this rate. But this is one of those cases where you had the out-migration of educated youth returning. So this person and their family would like to return to the area, meets all the qualifications for both the step 5 and for the position, and has basically agreed to come if we can negotiate the salary. The announcement that was out there did list a salary range from 69,431 to 77,446, commensurate with experience. I've talked with personnel office and HR and with the county administrator, and I believe we're all in agreement that the step 5 is warranted. So I'd like to ask the committee's consideration of that.
Can I get a motion to get it on the floor? John, seconded by Supervisor Smith. Seems rational. Regional committee. Any comments on relative to board members?
Just the funding for this raise comes from where?
I was just going to say, is existing funding within the department to do this. We have 2 unfilled positions, so we have money left over. In next year's budget, we will be reducing or eliminating a part-time position, so that will offset any future impacts.
Any further comments, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you for that. The second item is Supervisor Leggett wanted to bring up, have us bring back the issue, the paper that was we presented a year ago in May on the housing trust. This is the paper that you have before you is actually modeled after what Dutchess County did. They funded their housing trust with $12 million of ARPA money, but it does offer a vehicle for housing. A lot of communities have had a housing trust administer a land bank. And some of that is populated basically with tax sale property. And there was I know the county attorney, I think, had some discussion at the last board meeting, but NISAC distributed a copy of a court case recently that was recently concluded, I guess, and talked about a taking issue. And Larry, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
We addressed it with the full board. Basically, the foreclosure process in the state of New York will be impacted by the Supreme Court decision that was issued on May 25th of this year. Tyler versus Hennepin County, which is in Minnesota, which deemed that the Minnesota state law that permitted a local municipality or a taxing authority to retain the value received from a tax auction greater than the amount of taxes due, that additional amount of funding, as an illegal taking under the United States Constitution. So that would, it's my premonition that the state of New York will be soon modifying those provisions to comply with that Supreme Court decision, which was unanimous by all 9 justices. So nobody had any misgivings or misunderstandings on that opinion, or I should say rather a dissent on that opinion would be the more proper way to say it. Everyone agreed it was an illegal taking, and it does appear the state of New York's statute is very similar to the Minnesota statute. So funding it with foreclosed properties, I anticipate, is not a future option for Warren County.
Thank you, Larry.
If I may continue,
Yes.
the chairman and Supervisor Leggett and myself were up in Saranac at the local government day, and there was Avalon Association Towns and Villages. Yeah, and there was a pretty lengthy presentation on housing trusts, and so that's what prompted Supervisor Leggett to want to bring this back. I would provide it for your information. And when Supervisor Leggett's here, I guess we can discuss it.
Okay. I actually read this information this morning, and an example was Somerville, Massachusetts, and there's a sentence in there that kind of caught my attention, and this is really how you can achieve the goal of what this sentence kind of suggests is their housing trust focuses on preserving and creating affordable rental and home ownership units. I mean, the gist of kind of this meeting today kind of suggests to me that we're having difficulty getting there. Okay. Supervisor Gary talked about, Hamlets. Jim has spoken on more than one occasion about housing and the lack of housing, and just so it just says to me, boy, this is a thorny, difficult issue, and it's going to require some more power to kind of get us there. So.
We have not had at the county had a housing program for housing rehabilitation or new ownership programs. Well, since 2010, probably. One of the things in the budget process last year is I wanted to kind of restart that. And hopefully if we get some staff, we can do that. I think the housing study is part of that. Town of Lawrenceburg has done some housing surveys, income surveys for an application last year that didn't get funded that we're looking to assist the town with. I know Supervisor Leggett has a great project in his town for 32 or 33 units of rental. And we met the other day on that, and we will meet again later this week with the property owner. So there are some things moving, but again, as the chairman said, it all takes time. And
But I will, can I,
Sure. Go ahead.
just, one of the issues by the housing people spoke to us, and they were from Columbia County, and the state doesn't really fund these projects the way the people who try to make these projects successful, they don't get the state funding, and stagnant compared to, say, our neighbors in Vermont. They put millions of dollars in their housing, whereas New York State, and we're a big state, so it's going to be tough to try to get funding from government to do these. And
the funding round that's out there right now, the state of New York has $10 million available for housing. Statewide. Now, the metropolitan statistical areas, like the city of Glens Falls, city of Troy, they are entitlement communities. So they're not partaking of that pot. But still, when you look at the area that 10 million is supposed to encompass, there's not a lot to dole around. So that's just the game as it is today. There is another funding round in the fall under the home program, which we will look to participate in. Board did a resolution last week on, or the last meeting on submitting application for that. That's due in September. Again, but these are for housing rehabilitation to kind of just stabilize the existing housing stock. It's not really adding new housing stock. And so one of the other, I guess, statistics, anybody can use statistics any way they want, but the apparent trend is that the younger generation, man, I'm getting old when I say younger generation, wants a more mobile lifestyle, and they're more inclined to rent than buy. I mean, the tendency, I think it was in the 70% for home ownership. Now the desire is in the 60% range. And so I think that as a younger family, they offers more mobility if they're renting. And so I think the housing choices that we have that can be more quickly remedied is in the rental side. And again, it comes back to anything north of the blue line, though, becomes density issue about, the cost factor. The cost of land is significant. There's a lot. I live in Bolton, up on top of the mountain, and the lot next to me is, it's a substandard lot by the EPA, but it's pre-existing, and it's still $95,000 just for the land before you can even build anything on it. And that drives up the cost of housing. So I think the expansion of the Hamlets is one of those areas where it can offer the opportunity for more density and make it more cost effective for new development. That's just me.
Thank you, Wade. Ethan or Sarah, do you have anything to add or correct or?
Not on the housing topic, not necessarily, but a couple of quick project updates at the appropriate time. We are working towards the July kickoff for the comprehensive plan, Warren County. We are still hoping to get some more project advisory committee nominations from supervisors. Otherwise, the working group will continue to fill out that project advisory committee, which will be reporting to this committee. They're going to help work with the consultants, just make sure they're on the right course for the whole planning process. We just have our contract in place with Barton LaJudas for the multi-use trail modernization connectivity study. I think there was some confusion at the last board meeting, and Kevin, he just did clear it up, but this $200,000 study approximately is for the planning and some of the preliminary design work to improve these, 18 or so miles of trails and connect our downtowns. The sequence after that is to go after more detailed engineering and then implementation for construction. there are a variety of funding sources. Part of this planning process will be to design the study so that we can pursue, the half dozen different funding sources that we typically go after for these things. So that's all cooked into the planning process, is how are we strategic about the improvements that we're recommending? And we also have started sort of scoping the outdoor recreation economy strategic plan with the SE group out of Burlington. Met with those guys, I think a week and a half ago. And we're anticipating a mid-August kickoff date for that project.
Thank you, Ethan. William,
And
Sarah?
I had one other thing. Kevin Pagels was here talking about the master agreements he has with various firms for services. We are using one of those, the LOA, for update of some of the First Wilderness project sites and to look at preparing graphics and some materials for the NBRC grant program for the fish hatchery and connecting through potentially through Cronin's up to the state recreation area. So that's going to kick off today probably. But that was just, we write a request and it goes out to the businesses, firms that Kevin has pre-selected. We get a scope and the feedback and we just go, and it's not months of RFP and resolutions and we have the money, and so we're signing the LOA today and then we'll kick that off. So that's something that I'm glad they do, and it is really a help. So
Thank you, Wayne. Sarah, did you have anything?
I just wanted to mention that a couple of weeks ago, the Census Bureau released some additional 2020 census data. So I have been spending all of my time for the last few weeks doing very detailed time analysis for of that new demographic data, along with historic demographic data. Also been working on some single family residential housing analysis to complement the housing study that will be released in the next week or so. And also to support the comprehensive plan. So I will present that at some point, but if anybody has an interest before that happens, let me know. They're getting super old, really, 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 really old.
Our median age is approaching 50.
Any further comments from anybody? Seeing none, can I get them with your John and Fred Smith on the second? Thank you very much.